Who is to blame for the downfall of Kwon Jae-Sung? That is the big question going into Cobra Kai Season 6 Part 3 due to the ending of the episode Ungjangdo. Many factors are being considered, but for now, this is the tragedy of Kwon Jae-Sung. Let's talk about his fights with Robby and Axel, his being influenced by Kreese, and more. It goes without saying there are spoilers ahead, so proceed with caution. Let's recap what we know about Kwon so far. Since this is a continuation of my previous video, Why Kwon is Dangerous, I'm only going to recap the events of Kwon's arc in Season 6 Part 2. Feel free to skip ahead to avoid the recap, but be warned, you may miss some details later on in the video. As soon as he arrives in Barcelona, Kwon and other members of Cobra Kai, aside from Tori, begin taunting Miyagi-Do. He's successful in goading Robby into a kicking contest, winning one of the rooms Robby put up as part of the bet. Since Keen is unfocused, Kwon takes advantage of this and eliminates Robby in the first challenge, but he and the Dojang lose to the Iron Dragons. However, as the tournament progresses, Kwon helps his team move up in the rankings, and as instructed by Kreese, gets into the head of Robby and gets into a brief altercation with Axel and Sam. Going into the tag team challenge, Cobra Kai is in third place, but is on the brink of elimination like Miyagi-Do after losing a Tiger Strike and must defeat Miyagi-Do to progress to the semifinals. Kwon manages to score 2 points against Miguel and Sam, but due to his arrogance, loses to a focused Robby. After it's revealed that Tiger Strike tested for steroids, Cobra Kai is back in and Kwon defeats Diego Rivera from Furia de Pantera soundly, scoring the most points in the semifinals before the brawl erupts. Kwon manages to gain the upper hand on Robby, but after attacking Sam, Axel intervenes and kicks him into a camera. Kwon sees the Ungjangdo Kreese drop and uses it to attack Axel, but this backfires fatally as Axel blocks his kick, causing Kwon to land on the knife. Kwon's scream causes the brawl to stop as all the competitors look on in shock. Before we can talk about what led up to Kwon's self-destruction, let's first talk about Kreese's influence and how it led him down that path. As I talked about in my previous video, Kwon embraced the lesson of being heartless to a T and did whatever he could to get under Miyagi-Do, and specifically Robby's, skin. In Snakes on a Plane, Kreese mentions that it's good that Daniel was rattled, implying that despite not being involved in the kidnapping, John wanted to do whatever he could to throw LaRusso off balance. The new Prince Cobra insulted his rivals, made one of them flinch, and successfully scammed, somewhat, which I'll explain why in the next section, Robby out of giving up a hotel room. Kwon also knew about Robby and Tori's relationship very early on, and I'm not just talking about the aquarium. When Robby tried to catch Tori in the elevator, Kwon notably walked by with the other members and made a comment about the situation. As he was given orders to disrupt the off-duty soldiers, he embraced Kreese's lesson. Pierce the heart of your enemy, you need to harness all the hate inside you. Using that, Kwon attacked Robby's heart metaphorically by fooling Keen into believing that he and Tori were hooking up. Jae-Sung continued to harness that energy throughout the rest of the tournament, even in losing efforts against Robby and Axel. It's also implied in Ungjangdo that Kwon did a better job of embracing that compared to Tori, who was conflicted about Robby and the rest of Miyagi-Do, and if she made the right decision to join Cobra Kai. However, there is one thing that Kreese overlooked and caused Cobra Kai to make some costly mistakes: getting his two team captains to work together. Kwon seemed to object when Tori would walk off after the group picture and try to have things his way during the Captain's War challenge. However, he seemed to relent when Miyagi-Do was eliminated and listened to her advice on how to approach the Iron Dragons. The two would get along up until their tag team match against Miyagi-Do, with Tori forcing her way to the front once more. Kwon would retaliate by being the one to tag himself in when Tori was on the ground and would only tag in Min's Soul. He would repeat tagging himself in when Yoon No-jin was on the ground, though one could argue that this was because Yoon needed to be tagged out and then refused to tag out. In the hotel lobby, the two captains would get into an argument that almost resulted in a physical fight had Kim Da-eun not stepped in. When it was clear that Kwon was focused and Tori was not, Kreese stepped in and had to remind Tori that it was us versus them regarding her upcoming match against Sam LaRusso. Kreese could also be blamed for the two not getting along because he told Tori, "You don't have to like your team, sometimes we have to play nice to get what we want." Outside of these two conversations, Kim Da-eun did more mentoring for Tori this season than Kreese, which is odd considering that Nichols has more of a connection with John than Kwon does. That in itself could be also considered why Cobra Kai was not prepared for the tournament. Let's also talk about why Kwon lost to Robby. It was clear up until Blood In, Blood Out, Robby was constantly dealing with the turmoil in his mind due to Tori rejoining Cobra Kai and how that affected their relationship. Also, Kwon's plan to pierce Robby's heart by making him think that he and Tori hooked up also worked and threw him off his game. However, when Nichols told Keen that he got played, this sent Robby into a state of focused rage, and he no longer was intimidated nor dealing with this conflict. This is just like Karate Kid Part 3, where once Daniel got past his fears, he focused and was able to score the point in sudden death overtime and defeat Mike Barnes. Now, I'm not going to say that Robby has more karate experience than Kwon, because that's very unlikely. While we don't know the exact amount of time Jae-Sung has studied at the dojang, we could assume it's not much less than the amount of time Yoon Do-jin has studied given his skill set. But I will say that Robby spent more time adapting the Cobra Kai principles, primarily under Kreese, and knew how to focus that rage, as we saw in Season 4. But instead of using that rage to hurt his opponent like he did at Kenny, and I know Johnny said he was making it hurt, which I'll elaborate on that shortly, he used it to fight for his team, not against Kwon. Another reason why Kwon lost was because he didn't have an answer for Robby's counter against his strikes by using grapples and excellent defense. This was foreshadowed in their first scrap in Bingavut's a Barcelona, but Kwon was able to fight out of this because Keen was distracted. However, Robby learned from this and not only pulled a Kurt Angle on Kwon, but slammed him to the mat a few times and struck Kwon's legs to the point where he stumbled. Third, Kwon lost due to his rage, arrogance, and jealousy. Even before becoming team captain, he was cocky and made trouble for not only Kim Da-eun, but his fellow students. Jae-Sung also underestimated Robby during the kicking contest, and in the background, we can see a smile leave his face, and he had to focus everything he had on beating Robby's kick. Kwon also refused to tag out when he needed to, and tagged himself in to prove to not only Cobra Kai, but Miyagi-Do, and it cost him the match. He thought he didn't need any help, but as Robby proved, he was the better leader and helped pull his team together in the match. The fourth and literal physical reason why Kwon lost, he used the wrong move. As I pointed out in my What You Missed in Cobra Kai Season 6 Part 2 video, Robby was able to land the final point by going for a kick instead of a punch. This is because he learned from his match with Hawk at the All Valley, who was able to tie the match with a kick, and of course eventually win the match, when Robby missed the mark with his strike. This could be due to Kwon being tired out by Robby from throwing him around and taking away his ability to kick. So let's talk about that moment, why he was no match for Axel and why he resorted to using the Ungjangdo. I'm going to confirm this in my character analysis of Axel, which will be released after this video, but I believe no competitor has been able to land a hit on Axel outside of Yoon Do-jin in the alleyway confrontation, and even then it was a surprise attack. There is a moment in the fight where Axel winces from a strike from Kwon, but it's hard to tell if this was because of the strike landing or if he blocked it due to the camera angle. Outside of the competency in his skills, one advantage Axel has that we've yet to see from an opponent used to perfection in the Miyagi-verse is he has the reach advantage. This makes him similar to Ivan Drago because not only are they both strong, but they make it hard for any opponent to come within reach to land an attack. Because of this, like Robby, Axel was able to quickly take away Kwon's striking ability. Kwon was also blinded by his rage and arrogance. Because of this, he didn't realize the risk of executing the spin kick, the possibility of it being blocked, and since the Ungjangdo was in his hand, he fell on the knife. As Mr. Miyagi said, there's no such thing as bad student, only bad teacher. Teacher say, student do. Now, Kreese didn't make Kwon use the knife, but the fact that he brought it, and due to the lessons about being heartless and channeling the hate and anger, on top of the madness of the brawl, Kwon was going to show them no mercy, no matter what. Unfortunately, another lesson Mr. Miyagi once taught also applies here. Never put passion before principle, because even if you win, you lose. Now this is the big question going into Season 6 Part 3. What happens now? I talked about this more recently in my What Will Happen in Cobra Kai Season 6 Part 3 video, and to avoid rehashing that same video here, I'll briefly summarize. The tournament continues. Cobra Kai Inside the Dojo Part 2, which was released alongside Cobra Kai Season 6 Part 2, gave us a sneak peek of a rematch between Robby and Axel where the fight got moved to the All Valley. How exactly this happens and why the tournament continues is currently unknown at this point. However, there will definitely be consequences for those who were involved, specifically Kreese and Sensei Ivanov. Axel may be questioned, but given the fact that he was defending himself, and that he could also bring up the fact that Cobra Kai confronted him outside of the tournament, he wouldn't face any repercussions. Here are my final thoughts on Kwon. Brandon H. Lee did a phenomenal job not only bringing Kwon to life with his acting, but with his Taekwondo background. He's that guy you love to hate, and as shocking as the death of his character was in Season 6, it was better him than an established character. People would have been throwing more of a fit if someone like Robby, Hawk, or Miguel died. The purpose that Kwon's character serves is a lesson. Cobra Kai's philosophy on focusing on aggression and anger has its consequences, and that's something Kreese will have to own up to in Season 6, Part 3. Speaking of Kreese, he has become more ruthless since his first time spent hunting for the Ungjangdo. Given what happened between him and Silver, one can wonder how far he'll go to achieve his goal.